Hey everyone, it's Anna and Tucker, and we're back. Sorry I've been gone so long. I know it's been a little over a month at this point, but I was in Ireland for 2.5 weeks, and I got back a couple of weeks ago. I had lots of intentions of getting right back on the horse and filming some videos, and to be honest, I had more jet lag than I had anticipated. Our travel day home was extra rough for a lot of different reasons. There were a lot of almost missed flights, but not quite. So that was good. The flights themselves were great, but it just took a lot out of me, and I actually set up to film a few times, worked on a few scripts, worked on a few concepts, and I just couldn't do it. I was too tired, way too jet lagged, because Ireland, for me to get there, it's about a 24-hour journey total from door to door. In fact, my kids and I, we started timers on our phones from the time we left our house to the time we arrived in Ireland, and it was a little over 24 hours. So it's about 24 hours back home too, and I was exhausted. And then when I got home, I had to do a lot of back to school prep for my kids. I had to give lots of attention to Tucker, who went without me for 3 weeks, and I'm pretty sure by the time he actually came home, he was fairly convinced that he was never going home and that he was never going to see us again, I think. I got sent pictures throughout my trip, and so there's lots of pictures of him being really happy, and then there's a few pictures of him being extra mopey, like, where are my people? But yeah, so I had to spend extra time with this guy right here. And one more thing, I kind of got slightly obsessed with an arc that I started reading. I downloaded a few arcs before I left. I had every intention of reading them, but I didn't. And then when I came home, I looked at the publishing dates and I realized I didn't have a lot of time to read these books. I had a 550-page book waiting for me to be read by September, and I was like, I better get on that. Well, I really loved the book a lot, and so I couldn't put it down, and a lot of times it was a choice between filming and reading the book, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I chose reading the book. And if you're curious about what book held my interest for so long, it was the new Rebecca Ross book that's coming out in a couple of weeks called Wild Reverence. I loved it. I had no idea that it was a prequel to Divine Rivals, but I found that out about halfway through the book. So if that tells you anything, you don't actually need to have read Divine Rivals to read and enjoy that book. But I am curious if you guys want a full review, a full video on just that book, or if you would like to hear about it in one of my reading wrap-ups that I'm gonna get back to doing anytime soon. So let me know in the comments below which one you would prefer. Tucker has now gone to sleep. He's super over being on camera, so I'll see if I can get him back on here later, but otherwise just assume he's sleeping right next to me. But anyways, I'm back. I've got a lot of energy finally, and so I am really ready to share my trip to Ireland with you and kind of get back into the swing of things. So let me tell you a little bit about my trip, because it actually completely changed the way I think about book covers, oddly enough. So let me set this scene for you a little bit. My family and I are just getting off of a 10-hour red-eye flight from LAX to London's Heathrow Airport, and we landed in Terminal 2, which is known as the Queen's Terminal. And, you know, it was a red-eye. I was able to sleep. My daughter wasn't. But, you know, we kind of came off looking like zombies. I don't know. I'm a little embarrassed to show this picture of us, but it's the only one I have. And so we get off the plane and we are in desperate need of coffee. For our bodies, it was 3:30 in the morning when we landed, even though in London it was like 11:30 or 12 or something like that. So we desperately needed caffeine. And so we're all standing in line at Starbucks in the terminal, and my daughter and I are talking, and we kind of look across the way, and I see this big sign that says books. Could have also said bookstore. I'm not really sure which one. I don't remember, but it was a big sign, and it was like one of those, large souvenir shops that they have in the airports. So it had all kinds of stuff in it, but there was quite a large book section. And so my daughter and I got our copies, and we were like, see you later, guys. We are going to go check out those books, and we'll be back. So we had a little under 2 hours to accomplish coffee, book looking, and getting back to our plane. And so my daughter and I walk into the bookshop, and our eyes are drawn to a table full of classics, paperback classics. And I'm immediately drawn to a bright red and blue cover. It's very artistic looking, and I walk up to it and I look down. Sure enough, it's Brave New World. And I said, wait a minute, that's not what my copy looks like. I recently bought a copy, and it's right here. So this is my copy. And as you can see, it's black and white. And I mean, it is a little artistic. It's got this, guy in kind of a mechanical situation, right? But I see the UK cover, and I'm like, this cover is super stunning. So I have a picture of it here. I'll show you. And I started to notice that there were a lot of cover differences. I noticed To Kill a Mockingbird looked different. So this is my copy. And then I'll show you a picture of the copy in the UK. And I noticed a bunch of them were more artistic feeling. I don't know. And as my daughter and I are walking around the store, and I've got some footage, excuse the vertical footage, I was not thinking. But, as we're walking around the store, I'm pointing out books to my daughter saying, oh, that cover's different. That cover's different. That cover's different. Why are all the covers different? Now, not all of them are different, but many of them were. And my daughter turns to me and she's like, Mom, you're right. Why do our covers kind of suck? And I said, I don't know. I didn't realize there was that big of a difference between the UK publishing world and the US publishing world. And little did I know, that was just the beginning of my daughter and I spending the next 2.5 weeks noticing different book covers in the UK and Ireland space. Because when we got to Ireland, the cover difference continued. The cover for The Women, Gone Girl, Station 11, lots more of them. I think Tomorrow, and Tomorrow, different covers. Sunrise on the Reaping, slightly different covers. Now that one is very subtle, but it is different. And so I started to kind of get annoyed, if I'm being honest. To me anyways, the UK covers seemed more artful. They were softer. It felt like whoever comes up with the cover designs or approves the designs for the UK market trusts the readers more to be drawn to, artistic type things, more beautiful covers. And the US covers feel more literal. They feel more commercial. They're kind of, bland and hit you over the head with what the book is about. And it seems like, I don't know, there's more trust in the UK market than there is in the US. I don't really know how to quantify it better. I started to wonder about what the reason might be behind different covers for different markets. And covers are super important. I think we can all agree on that. They represent the first impression that a book or an author has a chance to make with a reader, right? Especially if the reader is looking for new material, a new author, a new genre, that type of thing. We are all drawn to what we think are beautiful or interesting covers. Bright colors versus, monochromatic type stuff, that type of thing. And personal confession, I don't know about you, but there have definitely been books that I've bought simply because I thought the cover was beautiful. I can't remember which books those are, and I can't remember if I actually liked the book or not, but I can tell you I have definitely bought simply based on a cover. So I'm wondering if you've ever done that, if you've just like strictly bought based on a cover, whether you thought it was beautiful or, you know, intriguing or engaging or something, and you didn't really pay attention to the plot or the author all that much. You just bought it because it was like a really pretty cover. But the opposite is probably true, right? I've probably passed over really good books that had really crappy covers that I just, you know, in glancing at on a shelf, in my mind, you know, subconsciously, I just kind of wrote it off without even really looking at what the book is, right? And so, I don't know, I started trying to figure out like why, because I was getting really annoyed. I was like, why can't we get the pretty covers? I think I asked my family this constantly on vacation. Like every time we passed a bookshop, I was like, I would stand there and I would be mesmerized by the covers and be like, why can't we get the pretty covers? And my family would be like, Mom, we're going to get dinner. Why are you looking at books? And so, you know, I think maybe part of it has to do with maybe publishers in America think that we need more literal covers, that Americans aren't capable or cultured enough to appreciate subtlety in the same way. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe this is my own personal European architecture loving bias, but I seriously think the American market is missing out. And so, like I said, this is a trend I started to notice while I was in Heathrow Airport, and this trend continued throughout my entire trip to Ireland. And I went to 2 places in Ireland. I spent the majority of my time in this idyllic, tiny little fishing town in West Cork, right on the water. It was beautiful. It is known for its tourism kind of in the summer, but on off season, I mean, there's like 200, maybe 300 people that live in this town. It's very small, but it's great. Even though the town is very small and it only has one main street, that's it. It has streets that are kind of branching off, but those are all like lead to homes or farms or other little towns. And so we just have like this main strip of shops and restaurants and stuff like that. And so even though this is a very small town, it did have a bookstore. And I went to this bookstore a few times. Unfortunately, I was really focused on the books and I didn't actually get any footage of the bookstore. So you're gonna have to imagine it with me. But we're in a small town, we're on the main street, and this bookshop is very small. It's like, I don't know, maybe 500 square feet. It is probably smaller than my kitchen and living room combined. I took a look around my house and I was like, I think the bookshop was smaller than this. But even though it was a really small bookshop, it was perfectly curated. I tell you, the selection of books that they had made like such good use of the very small amount of space that was there. They had an entire like section of a wall dedicated to Irish authors, which I loved. That's what I was looking for, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But they also had a very well curated children's section. It was small, but it was, you know, really good. They had Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, which, you know, I don't even think you can find Ready Player Two in Barnes & Noble sometimes. So, you know, if that tells you anything. And then they had a nice selection of not just Irish, but like kind of local to Cork authors. And they had a good selection of nonfiction and a good selection of international kind of bestsellers. But as I'm going into this bookstore, and I went in, I think like 2 or 3 times. Every time I went into this bookstore, I saw that they had different covers. I mean, they even had Calla by Colin Walsh, which is an Irish author. That book had a different cover than my version of Calla, so even that was different. And I was like excited, but kind of bummed too, because shopping for books and bringing them back in an international suitcase is a little difficult. I had to be very selective on what I bought and what I chose to bring back. I didn't find all that much time to read. I thought I would have more time, but I didn't. I did start a book while I was there. You know, I had all these thoughts of like, I don't know, pictures of me reading in cool bookish places or like cool ruins or something. I took a book to the beach one day. And then the rest of it I was just like reading in bed when I could, because I was out, you know, doing touristy stuff and trying to enjoy time with family. So apologies for the lack of footage, but you know, I was, my mind was elsewhere. Even though I had to be selective about which books I brought home, I did bring 5 books home. I bought 3 contemporary novels, and just a note, I tried really hard to purchase books by Irish authors and by Irish authors who are kind of difficult to get in the US. And so I got Where I End by Sophie White. This was a recommendation from the bookseller in the village that I was staying in. I told him that I was looking for Irish authors and I wanted something like a little spooky for upcoming fall reads. And this one is kind of difficult to get. I think maybe we can get a hardback copy of this, but I think that's like recent. But this is another one where the cover is quite different. This one is like, you know, got bubbles that are like very kind of artistic looking. And I think the US hardback cover is like a frayed rope that's about to break. Personally, I think this one is more interesting. I don't know, what do you think? Which one's more interesting? Then I got Fun and Games by John Patrick McHugh. Let's see. This says, it's a funny and frank coming-of-age drama propelled by heart-swelling comic agony. And so, I don't know, maybe this is the Irish version of Perks of Being a Wallflower. Like, that's kind of what that reminded me of. But this was another bookseller recommendation. And then I got Heart Be at Peace by Donal Ryan, and this was recommended by my boyfriend's mom. She was like raving about this book the first week of our vacation, and I kept meaning to pick it up, and then I kept forgetting. And so like the last night we were there, I was like, oh, I have to go get that book. And so this one, the cover is very different. You know, this one is like soft and I think a bit artistic, you know, there's like a gate that continues on the back. And the UK version of this is a picture of a realistic high street village for the US cover. I think they're very, very different. And I think that illustrates like my point. So the next one, oh, yeah, I got at a rare books shop. I think that's like, yeah, the next couple of books, they're the vintage books, but I got it at a rare book shop, which sounds better than used bookshop. I think that kind of describes the bookshop better. And I didn't get anything too pricey, but they did have like a €500 book. It was a first edition of like these old Irish fairy tales or something. The book was about 100 years old. It was in near mint condition, really. I mean, just like aged properly, but otherwise a-okay. So, I mean, technically that's probably the most valuable book I've ever held in my hands. But I got a hardback edition of Little Women. This is actually a UK printed edition, so this wouldn't have been available in the United States. And I believe, oh my gosh, it has like the old book smell. Like I just noticed this for like the very first time. And I've opened this a couple of times. So let me see, I forget what year it was printed. But I will look. Okay, it was printed in 1948. Could have also been 1957. I can't tell. It says first published in this edition 1948, last reprinted 1957. So I don't know which version this is, but it is printed by J.M. Dent and Sons Limited in London. It was made in Great Britain, and it's like in beautiful condition. I don't think there are any. Oh, there are like some photos or not photos, but illustrations. And so this is just like a really special copy. I love Little Women. It was one of my childhood favorite books, and so I had to get this one. And then the other book I got is The Last Tycoon by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So this is a US published hardback, but I think it is fairly rare. The Last Tycoon is F. Scott Fitzgerald's last novel, and in fact, it was unfinished. I think there are finished versions of it now. I think somebody like came along and finished it, but this version is the unfinished version. So I think the story goes that F. Scott Fitzgerald had written about 60,000 words or something like that, and then had a heart attack in the middle of writing this novel, and he died. So this copy is an unfinished, like it is the unfinished manuscript. Right, so it says right here, The Last Tycoon, an unfinished novel. And this one, I think I tried to figure out when it was printed. Oh yeah. Again, I don't know. It says copyright 1941 and then renewal copyright 1969. So I guess this is this 1969 version. I don't know. But it's a really, really nice copy, and it's in great shape. That's pretty much it for my kind of trip overview, my rant about UK versus US covers, and my mini Irish haul. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the covers. Am I like completely off, or do you kind of agree with me? Do you see the differences that I'm talking about? Why do you think the covers are different? Like, let me know. I'm really curious what other people think. There is one more thing that happened in Dublin. So we spent a couple of days in Dublin and visited some friends. So when I met up with this friend, I started talking about this YouTube channel, and I was like a little shy. I don't know. It feels weird to tell people in my real life about my channel. So I don't really mention it to people, but we got on the subject of books, and she says, you know what? I did this kind of crazy thing. You might like it too. She suggested that I go back and reread the complete Harry Potter series, but in reverse order. So that means start with book 7, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and work backwards. And I was like, that is kind of a crazy idea. Where did you get that idea? And she said, oh, I've done it. And it is crazy how much planning went into the entire series. And it kind of like gets revealed if you read it backwards, because, you can kind of like tell like, oh, you read it in book 7. And then when you read book 1, you're like, wait, that was planned all the way since book 1. That's crazy. And so I thought about it, and I was like, maybe that's not a bad idea. Like, that sounds like kind of a fun reading challenge. I was a huge Harry Potter fan back in the day. I was in line for the midnight releases, and then I would go home at midnight and start reading the book, and I would finish the books, in like 2 or 3 days, or whatever my life would allow me to finish. So as you can see here, or maybe you can't, but you can now, I have pulled out my copy of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. This is my original copy, first edition, midnight release book. And so I bring this up to ask you guys if you would be interested in seeing a reverse Harry Potter reading challenge, and if you would be interested in seeing videos dedicated to that, or you know, a mix of shorts and videos, or you know, something like that. But would this be something that you guys would be interested in seeing? Please let me know down in the comments below. I'm just trying to gauge kind of what the enthusiasm for this reading challenge would be, because it's kind of an investment to make. But I bring that up because that'll be coming up if you guys, if I get enough interest, that reading challenge will be coming up, and I'll do an entire series on it. I think it would be really fun, because I'm very curious to know if my friend is right, and reading the series in reverse order will uncover some seriously genius planning on the author's part. So again, let me know, what do you think about this experiment? Do you think I should do it? Or nah, not that interesting. And so now I really think that that is it for this video. I think I've shared a lot, I hope. Let me know if you guys want that full review or just a reading wrap-up of Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. Let me know if you want the Reading Harry Potter in Reverse Order video series, and let me know anything else you want to let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts on covers or Ireland or anything you want to tell me about. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be back, and I am hoping to be able to get back to my regular posting schedule 1 to 2 times a week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Tucker is still napping, by the way. I don't think I'm gonna get this one up. Right, Tucker? Tucker, can you see his paw? I'm gonna paw? Can you see the paw? I don't know. I'm gonna have to check this in post and see if you can see his paw. I might just look ridiculous. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.